Welcome to NFL Daily, where we embrace the NFL becoming like the NBA. I'm Gregg Rosenthal here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio. The trade deadline has come and gone, and there's no one I would rather have break it all down for me.
No one?
Maybe like one or two people,
Maybe,
but Mike Garafolo is very high on the list.
Maybe,
Welcome.
Sydney Sweeney? No?
I mean, I don't think she really has a hot take on the Jonathan Mingo trade. Like, hey, what are the Cowboys doing? That's what I'm into.
Maybe not a hot take.
I don't know what gets you going in the morning. Actually, I do.
Button up.
You don't need to button up. And yes, we're on YouTube. Everyone, check out the show there if you want. But for everyone else, it's mostly in the ears here, and they're just going to hear the great voice. I woke up early. You know, the daylight savings. A lot's going on in this country. Maybe I slept a little less because of that. Who knows? I don't know what it
happened
is.
in the day?
No. And, we turned it on, and it's like 6 in the morning. There's Mike Garafolo on my screen already on Good Morning Football. And here you are 8 hours later. You've done 3 shows in between. You've got more shows. I'm just making up numbers in terms of the shows.
It's all good.
Don't you like that the NFL actually is worthy of a trade deadline special?
Sure, it makes it interesting. Adds a little wrinkle that we never had before, and it gives us a reason to make calls and say hello to some people during the season. It's fun to a little rush when you get to break some news on a day like this, or really. I mean, the thing that's surprising is it starts earlier and earlier every single year, and even now to the point where you had 8 deals today. I believe 8 trades was the number, which matched last year, not as high as the 13 from 2022. But I had a conversation with a personnel guy the other day, and I said, well, why is this now a thing when it didn't used to be a thing? And they said there was a number of reasons, analytics and all this stuff. And he said, but the one thing that he really believes is there's so many coaches out there, coaching trees overlapping, that a lot of the terminology is the same these days, where it wasn't necessarily 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so now guys are able to come in and get acclimated a little bit more quickly. But even to the point of DeAndre Hopkins, in his second game with the Chiefs, there were a couple times where he went out there and Mahomes says, no. Oh, this side. He had to flip to the other side of the formation as they're lining up. There were 2 plays to the end of regulation where he wanted to hit him one time.
Almost cost him the game.
Didn't turn around. And then you saw Mahomes back to the sideline to Matt Nagy. Again. And he looked for him coming off the line. He had to have told him in the huddle. Looks for him coming off the line. He's not looking. So with those hiccups, they're still off to a great start there. But it just tells you it is still difficult in season to get acclimated to a new team and a new player.
Maybe that helps explain why teams were hesitant to do it in the past. And we're going to get through all the trades. We're going to talk Marshon Lattimore going to the Commanders. That's fun. The Za'Darius Smith trade finally happened. We'll talk some winners and losers. Jourdan Rodrigue is coming up later in the show. We'll see if the Rams press conference ends in time for her to join you, but we'll also preview the Thursday night game between the Bengals and the Ravens. But since we're starting big picture, I think this is interesting because, first of all, they moved the trade deadline back. Mm-hmm. And when I joke about them becoming like the NBA, it just was a weird place the NFL was in for a long time. I thought that teams weren't trying to improve enough during the season. You only have so many different ways to improve. I remember writing an article for the website when the Eagles and the Patriots played in the Super Bowl using some facts that those were the 2 teams that had traded by far the most in the NFL during the Howie Roseman and Bill Belichick era. And they're 2 pretty successful organizations because you should be looking at every way to try to improve your team. And now we move the trade deadline back. You mentioned the continuity. And the thing that's crazy with all these trades, and going back to Mari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins, is they're all so cheap. Like, unless the prices start getting more expensive, why wouldn't you be trading for players for these prices?
I've long since said, and John Schneider of this new wave, John Schneider was one of the ones that was really started to be, and some of these didn't work out, by the way, the Percy Harvin trade foremost amongst them. He was the one to say, I'll take the proverbial bird in the hand rather than the draft pick that I don't know what it's going to turn into. And I've said, why wouldn't you give up a 5th-round pick? Because 5th-round picks are a coin flip as to whether that player's actually going to make the opening day roster.
Yeah.
Year 1.
Yeah.
So right away, half of them, listen, sometimes practice squads and whatnot. Then you take it further and see how many of these guys pan out within the next 3 years versus you're getting a veteran. You know what you're getting. Now, you're not going to get them nearly as long as potentially if you hit on a 5th-round pick, but the numbers really tell you the value of if you're willing to move on or move that 5th-round pick or 6th or 7th or whatnot, the value you're getting back immediately and the value that you know you're getting. So I agree with you. I like the fact that general managers have become more aggressive. You've got the buyers and the sellers. And if the Cleveland Browns had their way, because they proposed this thing moving back a week, they proposed it moving back 2 weeks. So we would still...
Let's get another week.
They're trying because their point was you'd moved it back a week with the 18-game or 18-week schedule. Now, if you get a 19-week schedule, move it back another. Like, we're still not caught up, is what they're saying, to where they want.
Plus, we're only halfway through the season. Some teams not even. So
within the next week,
it back.
You're going to get more clarity on who's in and who's out, too.
Yes. A couple things there. Number one, love doing this show with a real, like, TV professional. If you do happen to watch the YouTube, like, Garafolo just can't go more than a second without making love with his eyes to the camera, like, because you're just a professional. Whereas I'm not. I'm just kind of sitting back here, like, not even thinking. It's it's an audio medium, but no, you're great at it. You're great at it. It's very natural. Number two, I disagree with John Schneider.
Sweet love. Go ahead. Sorry.
On his own assessment. The moment Percy Harvin returned that touchdown in the Super Bowl, is one of the all-time Super Bowl moments I've ever been at.
Okay,
that alone made that
just
a good trade. Yeah.
What about when Golden Tate pile drived him, or was it Doug Baldwin that pile drived Percy Harvin?
It's Golden Tate.
No, I think
punched them, and
one of them got stuffed in a trash can. Have you ever heard Mike Robb tell that story?
No.
And I don't know that he's ever told it on air, to be honest with you.
Let's hear it.
No, you gotta have him on and have him tell the Percy Harvin story. And like Pete Carroll coming to him, Mike Robb, I need, because this happened right before the team picture at the Super Bowl. So Golden Tate's got a black eye.
It's amazing.
In the picture.
It's amazing.
And you could see like their scowls on a bunch of faces. I've seen the picture before, but Mike Robb's version of the story is phenomenal.
I need to hear it, but I stand by my assessment. The pop, that was in the New York Super Bowl, right? Like,
yes.
The pop in that stadium was maybe the best moment in Seahawks history. Yeah. So I disagree with John Schneider. And then finally, just on the picks, and then we'll get to all these trades. These teams value these picks so much at this time of year. Oh, I could never give up a fourth-round conditional for a future Hall of Famer like DeAndre Hopkins or Devon. No, we couldn't possibly do that. We'll only give up a 5th to 6th pick swap. Oh, no, we're not going to improve our pass rush with a guy like Azeez Ojulari, for instance, who didn't get traded. Like, we're not going to dare give up a 4th-round pick. Then you get to draft day, and they're like, can I please move up 6 spots in the 5th round? Like, I'll give you next year's 4th, and they're just giving them away like candy, and it's nothing. So it's annoying to me. Why is that?
Why? You know why? It's because I'm the best at drafting.
Oh.
Who am I? I'm every general manager that ever existed. They all think, well, I'm not going to give it up because I know with a 4th-round pick what I'm capable of doing. Okay. I'm going to hit on that 4th rounder. So, but again, that's the old school way of thinking. They've come off of that a little bit. And then when you get to draft day and they've had their eyes on these guys for months on end and they get a chance to get them, then it's like the immediate toy right in front of their face that I got to have this guy, so I got to move up. I mean, I remember an agent years ago was a fullback, and he got somebody to jump. It was the Cowboys to jump over somebody, and that team was never going to draft him. But he got him to jump just because then he could in the future say, "Well, you traded up for him." It was like in the 5th or 6th round or something like that,
right?
Which was a great job by the agent because now you got something that you liked them this much, you jumped another team, so you gotta sign him to an extension or something like that.
Yeah, like a Marcus Davenport situation. Speaking of which, let's get to the news. Let's start with the biggest trade of the day, the one that really gave us something to anchor this show with. The Saints trade Marshon Lattimore, arguably the greatest cornerback to ever wear the Saints uniform. I'd have to go through it, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. And a 2025 5th-round pick to the Commanders for a 3rd and 4th-round pick. They also get a 6th in that deal. So really it was like a late-round pick swap, but they get a 3rd and a 4th for Marshon Lattimore. Of all these trades where almost nothing is changing hands for good players, this was actually a decent haul. I thought this made a lot of sense for both sides. I actually think it says good things about the Saints moving forward, but for the Commanders, it's a move where you almost didn't expect them to be putting some chips in the middle of the table this season.
Just to, for anyone who just heard what you said and maybe is an Eagles fan growing up like me and thinks like, no, Eric Allen is the best corner. But his best years were probably with the Eagles, I want to say. So I just want to throw that out there just to make sure.
4-time Pro Bowler, made the All-Pro team.
Oh, he was a Pro Bowler a bunch, yeah.
Marshon Lattimore. I'm just saying that's
I'm just
pretty strong.
But I don't know if the basically he had to be in his best years with the Saints, in which case then Lattimore would be the guy. We'll start with the Commanders' end of this.
Yes.
Because you're now seeing, and we've seen it repeatedly, if you are a team and you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you go for it, right? Because you know you're going to have to pay him. Now it's going to be, by the time Jaden Daniels does his deal, $70 to $80 million a year, whatever it's going to wind up being. I'm projecting. It'll be certainly above 60, which is where we already are. That's going to hamstring your ability to do things elsewhere on the roster. So the Commanders already feel like they're in that zone. Okay, maybe it's house money to a lot of us who didn't expect them to be where they are right now. And in their minds, it's like, let's go right now. Because you're also getting him, I don't know how many years. I think he has 2 more years left in his deal.
2 more years.
Yeah.
Only, quote,
yeah.
I think $16 million a year in base salary. That's good for a quality starting corner.
Now, if I'm Lattimore's agent, hey, you just traded for him. He performed for you down the stretch. This offseason, we're going to have a conversation because we want a new deal. Whatever. That's a good problem to have if you're the Washington Commanders, I guess. But this is where you're in that zone of we've got a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. We've got to strike while we possibly can and allow and spread those resources out there. I give him credit for doing it right now. I really do. It's a franchise right now that's got so many good vibes going on. The fan base is loving it. The players that have been. I talked to Terry McLaurin after the game on Sunday. Did an interview with him on the field after their 7th win of the season, and he talked about I don't take these days for granted. I thank God for the patience and the endurance to last through the times that weren't as sweet there. So you're sending a message to the locker room saying we understand how long it's been since you've been competitive. We understand how you're feeling right now. We're in the thick of this, and we're going to do the best we possibly can.
It's awesome because Lattimore was the one guy, now that Amari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins already went, that I thought could be an immediate, big impact. There's some role players that are going to help out. Marshon Lattimore, when he played this year, maybe not the best tackler in the world, but was great in coverage. He just hasn't played a lot, so he's going to have to be healthy down the stretch. The last handful of seasons, I believe he only had 410 snaps 2 seasons ago, 621 snaps last year. He's up to 415 already this year, but has been in and out a little bit with a hamstring injury. Didn't seem like he got along. He even said it to the media that he had a personal issue with Dennis Allen that they quieted down and figured out before the season. Now Dennis Allen's gone, and Marshon Lattimore's gone. But you're getting the very end of what should be his prime if he can stay on the field year 28, 29. He has a $2 million roster bonus too, so it's $18 million a year. But that's plenty good. And more than anything, it upgrades the worst position on their roster that they've been getting by. But suddenly you're replacing a negative at cornerback with a good player. I love it because they had extra picks, and they've been very smart since Adam Peters got there.
And Emmanuel Forbes is not a big guy. That's been the problem. He's too slight. And now you're adding a guy who can play more physically, can play with emotion, can play the kind of ways that that Forbes hasn't been playing. I was with Steve Smith on Sunday at the game. We're doing pregame hits on the sideline, and Forbes runs by, and he goes, "Was that Forbes?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, he gives this look, and he didn't say anything, but he gives this look like, man, I would eat.
He has withering looks. I would not want to be on the wrong side of a withering Steve Smith look.
His look was like, man, I would have eaten that guy alive. Almost like I can eat that guy alive right now. Go get me a helmet and shoulder pads. Because he's so slight. He's got twigs for legs. I feel I'm not trying to knock the kid, but they needed a bigger presence at the quarterback position. And you listen, it wasn't the greatest situation in New Orleans for Marshon Lattimore the last couple of years. You get into a place where the vibes are so good, and now you're with a competitive team after such a disappointing week 3 through 9 or whatever we're in now with the Saints and the way that fellow, all of a sudden that hamstring can feel a little bit better.
It's been a while for him since he's been on a good team.
You're playing energetically. You're feeling good about things. I think that's what the Commanders are banking on.
I think they're going to get good production out of him. It means the Saints only have one player left from that famous 2017 draft class. Do you remember the players in this draft class? That's too much putting you on the spot.
Eric McCoy, is he in the draft?
Eric McCoy is not in that class. Lattimore was the first one. They thought they were getting Mahomes with that pick, and at least that's the
Thomas?
story told. But they got Lattimore. Just stop.
Okay.
Because you're just
I'm
burying
a
yourself here.
just to be clear, I am horrible when it comes to remembering which draft is which.
The only reason I know this is because I tweeted it out earlier today, and so I looked it up. Lattimore. Ryan Ramczyk was in there.
Okay.
Marcus Williams having a great career in the second round. Trey Hendrickson in the fourth round. Alvin Kamara in the third round. All
keep going
in one draft. Alex Anzalone, who's had a nice career. Al-Qadim Muhammad is the last one. That's the entire draft.
Michael Thomas was 2016. Don't act like I missed it by 10
I'm just saying you got it wrong.
1 year.
So I actually think that's symbolic. This Saints team is ready to turn the page. I thought this is very encouraging. We spent a lot of time talking about the Saints on our Monday night show, so we don't need to repeat it all here. But this shows me they're willing to take $36 million in dead cap money on the 2025 books. That says to me, hey, we actually are going to be honest with ourselves. Finally, we're gonna rebuild, because he's still one of their better players. They have $60 million in dead money already next year, and they could have more if they get into their. Not this much where it's dead cap money. Lattimore, Jameis, Michael Thomas, and Ryan Ramczyk. So they're taking the pain now instead of putting it off till later.
Yeah, but they're going to we'll be doing the same thing we always do right before the start of the league. The Saints have restructured this. The Saints have restructured
I disagree, because I think they won't have the same guy running the team. That's
you guys
my
capable of
prediction.
Saving clips? Save this clip right here. Just earmark it right now. Hit a button. Just hit, even if you don't really hit a button, just humor me.
I'm just saying, if Mickey Loomis is not running the organization, and I don't know, these moves make me wonder.
If Mickey Loomis is not running, so you're saying he's out too?
Yes.
What's the dead money on that deal? Check on that. You know, the only general manager in the entire league in his contract year, Joe Douglas. Only one.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, you're right. Maybe Gail Benson wouldn't want to be paying the dead money on the front office. But I just think this actually is a sign. And who knows? It might have come down from above. We've heard this in the past. In fact, the Commanders last year, it was pretty clear from ownership on down. Mm-hmm. Even if the people there weren't staying, they were like, trade guys and get what you can get. And they were able to use those picks to get good draft picks and feel comfortable to get Marshon Lattimore. I think the same thing is happening here. They told the front office, get some picks. Good job by them.
They've told the front office a few things in the last couple of days.
That's what we got at on the Monday night show. That was maybe not the decision to get rid of Dennis Allen. And again, I think when I put this out on the old Twitter, just like that, this is a sign they're finally ready to rebuild. All the Saints fans are so happy. They will live with a year of pain to just kind of move on and move forward.
Well,
and walking into the studio right now, by the way, is Jourdan Rodrigue.
What's up?
The camera's gonna stay on me, so don't feel awkward as you get into the seat. And we got to move on. We're gonna talk about the next trade. This is just how we do it at NFL Daily. Mm-hmm. Mike, you got your fancy TV shows where people aren't walking onto the set in the middle of the show. But we want as much Jourdan Rodrigue as we can on the show. So here she is.
That makes one person.
Okay, there we go.
No, make it two. I'm in.
Let's talk Mike Williams to the Steelers. Fun trade. 5th round pick.
Yeah. Started with a breakfast sandwich and ended with well, didn't end, but Rodgers taking the shot at him. Hi, Jourdan. There she is in the 3-shot.
Hi, guys.
Called a 3-shot in the business.
What are we talking about?
Mike Williams.
And breakfast sandwiches.
What do you mean a breakfast sandwich? What, did he get one
when he was on his free agent visit?
Yeah.
The fans were bringing him somebody delivered a breakfast sandwich to him saying, we've got the greatest breakfast sandwiches here, sign here. So they did that. And then it ended with actually a terrible take by Ian Rappaport. What else is new? Saying that he's going to Pittsburgh where they have the best sandwiches. Listen.
Was he thinking like Primani Bro?
That's what he's thinking, yeah. They've got good sandwiches. Don't go saying Pittsburgh has the best sandwiches because it's just not factually accurate. But
Philly, you're saying would.
All the places I've lived. Philly, North Jersey, Jersey Shore.
Little John's roast pork. How about that?
Well,
see, I know.
Listen, you want to? I'm going to defend my turf if you're going to start talking sandwich.
Although I do, one of the things I miss most, I think about it a lot on Sunday mornings about living in New York is the breakfast sandwich from your
bacon, egg, and cheese
bodegas or whatever. So
just had one the other day. It was like, this is so good. My mother was visiting and she says, well, I want to get a bagel from Acme from the supermarket. I go, you are 6 blocks away from like the best bagels in the Hudson up there. It's like the best. Just go. I'll go get. You're not buying a bagel from Acme with that available. Mike Williams.
Yeah.
And the deal that we thought was going to get done immediately after the Devontae Adams deal. Pittsburgh's been looking for that big body number 1 type guy. I don't think he's still what he was earlier in his career. Certainly getting healthier this year. You got to give him the ability to do that as well, and that's going to continue. It's going to continue to be a process. But I think this adds to them. Russ has been throwing the moon ball, talking to the receivers there, saying it just gives us a better shot because we're facing the ball, whereas the cornerback's got his back to it. It just makes the so now you got a guy that can go up and get it, and has got that big wingspan and that big catch radius, as they like to say. I like the fit here. I really do.
It's a huge reason why we talked about a lot of these sort of like receiver thirsty teams that were combing the market the way that they were. Someone who draws attention away from other people and other facets, other elements of the scheme and the game plan in order to open those things up. And then once those things start to draw attention, then you hit that guy on a moon ball. And I like the fit here. It was really no secret. And Mike, you did some great reporting on this. You know, the Steelers were for quite some time wanting to bring in a receiver, and I think we're pretty thorough in the job they did and kind of checking to see who was available.
I guess they didn't want Deontay Johnson back because he wouldn't have cost even this much, a 5th-round pick, but that says a lot, I guess, about that relationship. I watched the Aaron Rodgers McAfee reaction to Mike Williams. He was live on air when Mike Williams got traded, and then they asked him about it, and Aaron Rodgers politically hinted at what you just said, which is it's not the same Mike Williams, maybe, that it's been tough coming off the torn ACL. He never was like the fastest of receivers in the first place. So it might take sometimes till a year or two to get all that back. But if there ever was going to be a spot where he could make some impact, it would be with the Steelers, who could use a big body receiver down the field other than George Pickens. And Russell Wilson's got to throw that thing up there. So that should be fun to watch. They also made another trade today, Mike. They brought in Preston Smith. I was surprised by this one. Why do you love it?
Because I go back to when I covered the Giants, the Ernie Accorsi days with the general manager. They drafted Matthias Kiwanuka and Justin Tuck in back-to-back years when they already had Osi Umenyiora and Michael Strahan, and his statement that we used over and over: you can never have enough pass rushers. Well, this is the case right now. And I go back to, I compare this kind of what we talked with the Commanders with the rookie contract. They've got Russell Wilson on a veteran minimum deal right now, so they were able to take on the money that Preston Smith is owed the rest of the season here to get him in with T.J. Watt, with Alex Highsmith. You don't just have 2 pass rushers. You can add a third, and it gives you flexibility. And Highsmith's been banged up this year as well.
He might be a 4th. Nate Herberg's a really good young player too, but 4 is good.
There you go. See, there's 4. So that's a good number here.
I think he is the 4th, but also like Herbig, they might be managing him a little bit. He's had some issues with the hamstring, so they might be managing him a little bit, especially if they think they're going to really make a push. So having 4 guys, including one who they think can come off the bench, this might be a strategy move for them in terms of not just bringing another guy in the rotation, but also in case of soft tissue injury management or any number of things to preserve. And it's almost like spelling certain guys to maximize their reps once you do get in those rush situations and potentially, December, and they hope the playoffs.
Well, one of the things that drives me crazy about the Steelers is they never let T.J. Watt off the field. And if you watch those games, he's always gassed and a little not at his best late in the 4th quarter he makes these big plays, but a lot of times like he needs a blow late in the game. So I love it. It's like the Eagles. They have, they always try to have 4 pass rushers, get 4 pass rushers, and it didn't cost much. It was for a 7th-round pick. The Packers defense has been a little weird this year. Most of their pass rushers have less production than they have had in the past. It's a different scheme. He probably just wasn't a scheme fit. Let's talk about another former Packers pass rusher. It's Za'Darius Smith. He's been to a few teams since, and now he's going to another one, going to the Lions. It ends up costing the Lions a 5th and a 6th-round pick, although they get a 7th back. So it's really a 5th and a late day 3 pick swap. Not a lot for Za'Darius Smith. You pay him, I think they're paying him what's left of his contract, which is quite hefty. It's just this year, but he has a big base salary. But they kind of needed this, Mike.
I'd have to check on that. I don't remember the financials on that one. That feels like it happened 3 days ago, and it was earlier this morning. So it's just...
Well, Florio did sort of a half report on Sunday, so maybe that's why you're thinking it feels like 3 days ago. I know you don't maybe pay attention to the other reporters, but he reported something where he was like,
going to happen.
Well, he said it's like it's expected probably or something.
Yeah, this was. It's like and you could see it's funny when you see that all on the screen, you could see how it came together. It's like, well, we're not just going to do the 5th round. But, well, what if we do that? Okay, but then we want this back because we don't want to lose it. And it's like, okay, all that just gets thrown up on the screen there. It's like that's how it finally came together. So that's what the last couple of days were really all about in finalizing this one. It makes a lot of sense. Once it became clear that Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, like those guys were untouchable. They weren't going anywhere. They never were. Za'Darius Smith then became the best next possible option for the Lions, and he fits so well in my mind. Don't even want to say like Aiden Hutchinson replace and nothing about that.
Right.
You lose Aiden Hutchinson, you just do the best you can at this point. But he can give you a little pass rush. He can play against the run. He's got a ton of experience.
They're trying to replace him in the aggregate, which again still isn't replacing him. But when you saw Dan Campbell skipping in front of the podium a little bit, like doing a little like fun
Today?
happy dance. This was a while ago when asked about whether they're going to bring in a pass rusher. I did think of you, Mike, because I was like, how early? It's maybe an inside baseball question that you don't necessarily have to answer, but how early in this process did this become so obvious to you that this was going to be not just happen, but be like the fit. Just this tier of guys too, because you've got like Mark Davis sending emails saying we're not trading Max. You have all of these things that are public, but when a certain tier is unreachable, and then you're kind of targeting a cluster of players.
Which part that Za'Darius was going to the Lions, or that those guys were untouchable?
Both. That not necessarily Za'Darius specifically, but that sort of that
they were
cluster,
getting someone.
That
maybe.
cluster of
You start to piece it together. You really have to. That's something that I've really learned over the last couple of years. Is I used to wait for like people to tell me, and then you go, "Wow, wait!" But I heard this person say that, and I guess I thought that there was still another step. Or you got to make the leap at some point. You start to hear these like denials basically, and you go, "Oh, this is happening."
Yeah.
Okay, like who's really good at that? Ian Rappaport. Tremendous. Unbelievable at
Putting the pieces together.
But I'll be like, but this person said that. He's like, yeah, that means it's getting done. I'm like, no, but still it's done. Then it winds up happening. You're like, whoa, okay. So you almost, not that you're pushing it over the line, like it's already done. You have to hear what people are saying and realize you have to have a personnel person to reporter translation book. Basically.
Now, I don't want to get too deep into it, or impugn Ian's character, but is there a chance that it's like game recognizes game? He can see the lies and the obfuscations for what they are because he's good at that. Whereas you're like, you're just a better person. And so you don't expect the lying quite as much.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. I believe in people.
I think this is a great fit, by the way. He's got the same pressure. He's not the same as he used to be necessarily, but I think he's a really good fit in this defensive scheme. Change of scenery is always good, for a player who's bounced around a couple of times. He's got the same pressure rate as Khalil Mack right now.
And he hates the Packers even more than Lions fans. He really hates the Packers.
It was a weird ending.
And he had some revenge games already because he did join the Vikings for a year before going to the Browns, but yeah.
But back to answering your question, Jordan. When I started to have conversations with people not even involved with the Lions or Za'Darius Smith, and I mention him, they go, "Oh yeah, well he's going to the Lions, right?" Like, and so everybody around it started to have these. They knew it was going to happen. You never heard it necessarily directly from the Lions or from Smith's camp, and you go, enough people around it are saying that it's getting done. So that must be and you go, okay, within the next couple, it's going to happen within the next couple of days, and it happened early this morning.
I would just love to do a whole show about like what your life is like.
I know.
Really not that interesting.
Honestly,
this is why we have Mike Garafolo
I geek out over this stuff
in the studio. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll wrap up all the trades and maybe throw out a few winners and losers. Michael move on to his 17th show of the day. Back in a second. Back on NFL Daily, when I was talking about watching you 6 in the morning, already on my television, Mike.
That's good context that he was on your television when you were watching him at 6 in the morning.
You see, you missed the start of the show, Jordan. Like joining the conversation midway
You're just
through.
joining us now.
I think you guys were talking about this Jonathan Mingo trade. Wasn't that one of the first ones of the day to happen? And people were just saying, like, why are the Cowboys making a trade again? They actually gave up a 4th-round pick to get Jonathan Mingo and a 7th. Weird.
Yeah, very. A lot of other teams thought it was weird too. If it pans out, Who cares, right? I don't want to sit here and bash a team for making after we just said like teams should be willing to kind of and so if you feel this strongly
a fourth round pick is not a crazy. Everyone's making this out to be like, oh, they got robbed here. They gave up the same as the Chiefs gave up for DeAndre Hopkins, which is true. That it is a fair point that they maybe should have sent something less. But we're talking about the difference between fourth and fifth. I think the problem is Mingo just has really poor tape at the NFL level. And Jerry Jones even said publicly, well, we loved him coming out of college. We loved the tape. And so I always hear that reasoning from NFL teams of why you make a move. Well, we loved his college tape. Well, how about the NFL tape? Isn't that way a lot more? Like if he's coming out in the draft now, like he obviously is a very different evaluation because he struggled to get open as a pro.
It is tough tape in large portions. Also, though, like it seems to me like all over the league, just subtle shots being taken at the state of the Panthers over the last couple of years, like from Sean Payton, not so subtle, to, okay, well, we're going to throw that out. We're looking at college specifically. You actually hit it on the head with something you said earlier, Mike, pan out. So to me, I think we first have to define, what does that mean if you're the Cowboys? How does this pan out? Like what makes it successful for me? Because of Dak's situation, it's looking at potentially panning out next year, getting him in your building ahead of time, redeveloping him from the situation that he was previously in, recalibrating some of the tools that they liked apparently coming out of college.
I did too, by the way. I was kind of a fan of Jonathan.
Sort of hitting the reset button. This to me like screams not at all something for this year in the slightest. It screams like get Dak a second weapon next year because we don't know how long he's going to be on the shelf with the hamstring.
Pan out to me, I'd say pass fail if they sign him to another contract. And that's part of it, the financials here, because you're getting him for 2 more years under contract, right? So anybody who's comparing this now to, let's say, Deontay Johnson, it's not a fair comparison because Johnson you're getting as a rental, and then you have to decide, you may have to pay him $20 million a year as a free agent at the end of the season. You don't have to make that decision with Mingo. So that 4th round pick, I would just, this is the problem with deadline day is I still haven't had a chance to kind of reset and go over some of this stuff. I want to find out how this conversation happened. Like if that 4 was a 5, would they still have been able to do this deal? Could they have gotten him for a 5th round pick? You never really know. You're playing poker. So I need to know if the Panthers are telling them it's not going to get it done. We already have a 5th plus on the table or something like that. It's got to be a 4. And if that's the case, I'd love to know who the 5 was because I didn't sense a lot of people that were like, oh, yeah, we were in on him too. So they must have been around the 5th. I'm not getting a lot of that right now. And if the Panthers played poker here and got more than they should have gotten, good job, Dan Morgan.
Greg, odds are that this is the move made in advance so that Jerry Jones can point to it in like deep summer next year when everyone's like losing their minds over the fact that they haven't done anything to that point. And he's like, oh, we did this ahead of the deadline. That was for this year. Yeah, what are the odds? Maybe?
Yeah, when Trey Lance is throwing to Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver 2 next year, it kind of reminds me of that trade.
The fact that Dak Prescott is out for at least 4 weeks and Trey Lance isn't starting.
But Jerry Jones hinted on that same radio show that Trey Lance might be starting or Trey Lance might be involved. Who knows if he's the one?
It should be it should be.
I guess.
He's down, boom, Trey's in.
If it's not going to go well, if Cooper Rush is a pretty good backup, that if he's that much worse than Cooper Rush, like, I get it. You have a whole group of people to deal with. I would say success would be, forget another contract, because he's only in the 2nd year of his rookie contract. If he's their 3rd or even 4th receiver in 2026, like if he's still there and he's a rotational player for him, then that's a success. You're only giving up a 4th round pick. If he's getting 500, 600 yards a year or something like that, like that's a success. But, considering what's happened in Carolina, that's not guaranteed. Yeah, we mentioned, you just mentioned Dak Prescott. He's likely headed to injured reserve, according to Jerry Jones. So any hope that he could be back in the next couple of weeks is basically gone. We don't need to stick on that. We've talked about Dak Prescott enough. That's pretty much it for the trades that struck my fancy. We had a Khalil Davis trade to San Francisco. There were a total of 18 trades throughout the trade deadline period, and then you mentioned 8 today. But that pretty much wraps up
18
trades.
18 from the start of the regular season. Is that what it was?
I believe that's what it
is.
Which
I think the record was 22, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so we doing it.
Short. We also fell short of, I think 13 was the high watermark the last couple of years for the last day. Hold on, our friends at NFL Research gave it to
Look
us.
at you helping us out. Because we had the Cam Robinson trade. We had the Tre'Davious White trade. Actually, we will mention that quickly, that the Ravens pick
Go ahead.
him up.
While I look this up.
Didn't have a lot of playing time
Yeah.
for the Rams, and just hoping to have some depth there. The official number from the research department, most players traded since 1995, was in 2022. There was 22 teams, 22 players. This is the third most, 19 players. So pretty good. 2019 had 21 players. A couple little other items before we do a couple of winners and losers. Norv Turner is joining the Raiders staff, which is amazing. He's the senior advisor. His son, Scott Turner, who was in Carolina, is going to be the offensive coordinator. Let's actually take a look, too, if you're watching on YouTube, for the Jimmy Johnson quote retweet of my tweet. If I have a chance to self-promote, I'm going to. I learned today that Jimmy Johnson follows me on Twitter, and he quote retweeted me. So that was really exciting. He says Norv is one of the best. We got Norv Turner, Mike, back in an NFL building.
Timeout. Did you then retweet Jimmy retweeting you?
I did, yes.
You got to do that.
I did.
You got to do that. Like, hey, look, this famous person just retweeted me. Like, people do that all the time when Mahomes retweets him, which, Patrick,
Oh, I could go
any
even
one of these days, buddy?
I can go even further. I was shocked by this. Never met Jimmy Johnson. No, relationship there. He only follows 29 people on Twitter.
Wow.
Oh, you would have looked.
I'm one of them.
Yep.
I'm one of them. Here are some others. Mario Cristobal,
Okay.
the head coach.
Yep.
Dave Wannstedt.
All right.
He's in the mix.
Sensing a theme here.
Tony Gonzalez. I'm not going to read them all because I don't want to blow up
Give me
the
the-
spot
give me
of
the
the
oddest-
CEOs. Jason Taylor. I'm just saying these are the types of class of people I'm with.
Yeah, like give me
Carissa Thompson.
Okay.
Okay.
Fox.
Rob Riggle. A lot of
Also
coworkers.
Fox?
Kurt Menefee.
Where I'm trying to figure out where you come in. Keep going.
Has he,
Dan Marino.
did he perhaps
Michael
mistake you
Strahan.
for a coworker of his?
No,
Yeah.
no. Michael Strahan, Troy Aikman, and then me and Peter King, like the two titans of NFL reporting and analysis. So
Pillars.
thank
Good for
you.
you.
Thank you, Jimmy Johnson.
Good for you. This is the opposite of the early days of Twitter when Tay Diggs followed me. And I was like, oh my God, Tay Diggs followed me. And then looked up and saw he was following 100,000 people. That is the opposite of that right there.
No Schrager, who he works with. That's interesting.
And you'd think like, oh, maybe it was a slip of the thumb. But the fact that he retweeted you acknowledged like, I follow this dude and here's some information that I appreciate.
Do we
I
think
love it.
he runs his account?
Yes, because of if you follow who, it's not a lot of posts, and
But this was worth it.
He's
This
just
one
given
was
some-
this was his time to weigh in, and that's a great.
I love it. I love this staff, by the way. Marv Lewis is on this staff. Joe Philbin is on this staff. Rob Ryan is on this staff.
Tom
It's just bringing
Coughlin
them all together. Tom Coughlin is
an
involved.
advisor.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is fun. Norv Turner I don't know if he's underrated, but he's just forgotten at this point from like new fans. But a hell of an offensive coordinator deep into his career.
I've had great conversations with him. He's been around when Scott's been coaching games, and I've had a chance to talk to him. And I'm like, this guy's just a great offensive mind. I wrote a story for the Super Bowl game program last year. I'm already forgetting what the topic was, but I talked to Norv about it. Oh, I think it was the style of quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls. And I talked to him about Troy, and it was just amazing just to have that conversation with him, and just thinking to myself, like, this guy's got good football left. I felt that way about Kevin Gilbride when he retired. I'm like, this guy still could be a good coach, but I guess it's
Who knows? He might be running the Raiders next year with head coach Scott Turner. Like crazier things have happened with that organization.
You think that's where new minority owner Tom Brady wants to go? I think he's,
Well, that's a fair point. Finally, the Colts reportedly, according to Stephen Holder of ESPN, turned down teams calling about Anthony Richardson, saying he's totally off the table, weren't listening. I thought the offers were that great right now, but it makes sense. It would be weird.
I don't even know that it got to the point of offers, but the Colts are trying to. Not trying to. They're making it clear that they still believe in Anthony Richardson. Although I may have seen this and I may have misread this. Did Shane Steichen say that Joe Flacco is still the guy for the rest of the season?
He did again.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
I don't
for the rest
think
of the season.
That's what he said again. Yes.
How many points did they score on offense the other day?
I don't believe him because if they keep scoring 3 points, then he won't be. But he's
Zero.
It's hard to say. Well, it's week to week. I get it. That's an unstable public way to approach things.
Yeah, there are two benefits of this, being out there, of first of all, teams certainly, if someone is benched effectively or needs more development time, whatever, yeah, you got to call the team. Like, of course, you have to at least check, like, hey, what's up with this guy, kind of a thing. I mean, there's crazier calls than this that are happening around the league for star players, for quarterbacks at any given point, right? But also it's
right,
good.
like joining forces with Tom Brady when you're Sean Payton and coaching the Saints, joining forces with Tom Brady, who's still an active player with the Dolphins. That kind of crazy? Like, yes, like
Sure, yeah.
nothing will be crazier than that, and
Like-
that actually happened. Go ahead, sorry.
Like best sandwiches in Pittsburgh, kind of crazy, right?
Yes.
But I think that this also is a really good thing for the Colts to have out there as well, because it does show, like, to your point, Mike, it does show that we're definitively no, like, we're not moving him. Kind of similar to Bryce Young too. You heard that there was some interest in him as well, and certainly people are going to call to see if, you know, first round guys, top 5 picks are available, and of course you're going to do that. And if something pops, then it pops. But in this case, super unlikely, and it's good for the Colts to have it out there, being like, no, this is our guy going forward. We invested in him, and it's very good for everyone to have that out there.
As I'm looking at this, pretend you're a GM, Jordan or Greg. Like,
Hey, Mike.
they've interviewed women in recent years. You could
Two.
We're getting
You
there.
don't have to take it personally, Mike. It is a fact, just that it never happened, so it's fine.
Why don't you be a trailblazer, huh? The hell was I asking you?
I don't know.
What? Pretend you're making an offer for Anthony Richardson. What is it? Pretend you're making an offer. You're trying to get Anthony Richardson away from the Colts. What is it? Like, what in your mind? Try to make a fair offer to me, Chris Ballard, for Anthony Richardson. Only draft capital.
I'm also trying to think what team. Like, there's only a few teams that this could.
But to be clear, I have
be.
no idea.
Maybe the New York Giants. If I'm the New York Giants,
Yeah.
I would give you a second-round pick. That
Done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd give you a second round pick that could turn into.
Don't give him more. He just said second.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We're prepared to offer you all the free coffee.
Yeah.
You got
Dang.
it.
I think he could. In the past, guys who haven't worked out in their first spot get a second. Josh Rosen got a second-round pick. I believe a hell of
It
a
was
lot.
a swap,
I
wasn't
can
it?
fix him.
It was like a late second, but there's been some guys who have not worked out that still get a good trade.
Challenge on that,
I'm not-
Rosen. I think it was a swap. I think it was like sliding down in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. But
I also want to just make it clear, I still believe in Anthony Richardson. I just think he needs actual development time, which they knew going into it and should have managed things differently for that reason.
I think Melissa Stark had a report about this during the game about how he was there, he was cheering, he was locked in, and all this stuff, and that's great. It better not just be for show. Because that's what he's got to do. He's got to be involved. He's got to be locked in. He's got to be taking mental notes. He's got to be watching everything that Joe Flacco does, even if they're scoring 0 points. Just his process and how he goes about things. I was stalling long enough for Greg to get his answer. He's got it now.
Yeah, not only was it not a pick swap, they gave up more than a second-round pick. They gave up a second and a fifth. It was the 62nd overall selection.
No, the hell with that. Give me the full. No,
That's
where's
it.
my pen?
That's it.
No, see, now you're gonna have. It was definitely a slide down. It wasn't like
And that GM, by the way, that GM is still
Chris Greer
still running the team. Chris Greer, so he survived that trade. All right, quickly, some winners.
He's moving on before.
Do we have any winners and losers here before we get going? I'm gonna just rapid fire. You can throw out anyone. First, the Chiefs and D-Hop.
Come on, we watched the game, right? Like, come on, that's great.
Let's throw up the DeAndre Hopkins tweet that he sent out on Tuesday.
Oh,
I
you know
absolutely
that
love
pulled
this.
at your heartstrings there,
He
Greg.
sent out the Randy Moss, Tom Brady hugging each other. Oh, I love that. Now, Randy Moss was an offseason trade, but it was for a fifth-round pick, so some similarities there. Let's go.
Now, Greg might need a minute, so I guess I will carry the show. No,
I don't need a minute. Anyone stand out to you as a winner?
Yeah, I was going to pick the Chiefs as well as a winner. I also, I like, what the Cardinals did. Just, it wasn't a huge move, but getting Baron Browning and just seeing if he's a fit. Guys from that coaching tree have often connected with, kind of spare outside linebackers. This is sort of a Fangio thing. Get your extra outside linebacker and turn him into a situational rusher, an efficient rusher. You can tell that that's sort of the pattern that Jonathan Gannon's trying to follow here. So I liked it. I thought it was kind of subtle, but I like that move.
the question is who won the trade deadline?
Anyone.
While I was looking up,
at all.
I was completely wrong. Yeah, you're right. They got.
I mean, we've kind of
we moved on.
Established that no, not that we've moved on. More that you don't remember draft picks either.
Dude, I don't remember anything involving the draft. I apparently just hold it for a little bit and then I move on.
That's healthy, actually. It's really healthy to do, frankly.
I'm
Za'Darius Smith. He would. I'm going to throw out a winner. He's just a personal winner to go from the Browns to the Lions, the most exciting team in the NFL. Maybe going.
The Steelers are interesting to me. There were two moves that really makes a lot of sense for them. At what point do we go from, well, here's Mike Tomlin extending his streak of winning seasons or non-losing seasons to this team's a contender.
He's trying to win, Mike. That's a great point because it's like they're going from stable to pushing, right?
Yeah.
That's what these moves say to me. No, it's not like you got, the receiver who still is, looks like the former version of himself. And maybe he could get some of that back and that'd be great for him because it seems like he kind of went through a lot up in New York recently on a personal level with teammates. And then also bringing in that rotational rusher. This is a team that's like actually thinks that it can push harder than even or median or just that, not losing record. Like they actually seem like they're pushing here, which I think is a vibe.
I thought you were going to say, when is Mike Tomlin going to start taking some heat for not winning any playoff games? 'Cause I can tell you locally, they're a little sick of as much. Like there is a group of the fan base. It's like we're sick of being the 9-8 team. So it's good. They're trying to.
Yeah,
be better.
I made the point on Good Morning Football this morning that I think they're dangerous because their coaching staff is so good right now, and what they've been able to do. Like it's one thing for Mike Tomlin to go into the room and make the gutsy call and know he's on an island and say we're starting Russell Wilson. I don't care if anybody in this room agrees with me or not. And then it's another thing for that coaching staff to then say, all right, he's the boss, we got to do it, and then come up with the best possible game plans to get this guy moving in the right direction and limiting his mistakes, which is a big part of what they've been doing, and not letting him start to try to do too much. And Danny Smith and Terrell Austin, who I'm old enough to remember Terrell Austin being a hot head coaching candidate. Maybe it's time to start mentioning that again. I just feel like from a coaching staff perspective, the question was who was the biggest threat to the Chiefs, and I'm thinking on any given day that coaching staff can get that team ready to play against anybody the way that they've been coaching.
Ooh, I like that take. And I think the Commanders as an organization are winners because even from an ownership level, they made them trade the picks a year ago. They had a vision of getting the right guy in the building. They get Scott Peters into the building. Now they have a surplus of picks and rookies. They feel like, hey, this is actually a time to move, and they make a move that's a long-term plan already turning into a shorter-term plan, and they acted, and they got a good player. We're winners. We got Mike Garafolo in the studio. We got a lot of trades. I'm going to go just a few losers. Ravens defense didn't add anyone. I was kind of hoping they would add someone in the secondary. Chargers didn't add anyone. I don't know if they needed.
Trey White didn't do it for the Ravens?
Oh, my bad.
You meant pass rush, though, I think, right?
Yes.
You wanted a pass rush.
I meant more of an impact player, but that's fair. That wasn't nice of me. Azeez Ojulari, he's still with the Giants. He could have been like Za'Darius Smith going to like a great team, but
I don't think he's upset about that though, because Dexter Lawrence is tearing it up. You've got Kayvon Thibodeau coming back. You got Brian Burns coming back. He could then not receive as much attention, pad the stats, get into the offseason. I think we're going to be sitting here in March. Maybe I'll be sitting here. Maybe I'll be home. I don't know. Haven't decided where I'm going to do free agency from, but maybe we'll be sitting somewhere and saying that Azeez Ojulari is this year's like, whoa, that guy got that kind of money. I think it could be big money for Azeez Ojulari, and I think staying with the Giants could actually help him.
Great point. That is why
I'm leaving
you are the insider. Getting Mike Garafolo out of here. Appreciate you, Jourdan. You will be back with me after the break, and we're going to talk about a great TNF game, Ravens and Bengals. Back on NFL Daily with my friend Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic, talking about a TNF game that's been on my radar since the very beginning of the season. Now, that's partly because I wanted to make sure I got the best booking possible for the TNF recap, and I did. I locked down Nick Wesseling early.
Big get.
But also just because these two teams only play awesome games. They already played one awesome game this season, Jourdan, and yeah, the Bengals' record isn't as good as you would expect at this point in the season. Frankly, neither is the Ravens for how good a team they are. That actually makes the game bigger for the Cincinnati Bengals. They kind of need this one in Baltimore.
The stakes are so high for a Cincinnati Bengals team trying to, like, once and for all this season, right the ship and really start to put things together. And also for a Ravens team trying to just dominate people, to establish that we know how to win in November and keep rolling that wagon all the way into the postseason. There's maybe some very sneaky MVP dialogue here on the line as well. I am so heckin' fired up for this game, Greg. Oh, my God.
I am too. Al, Kirk, I better not even
Bring it,
hear
Al. Come on.
like a minute of apathy or complaining, no matter how long this game is going. But these two guys deliver. Look, last time, 41-38 back in Week 6. Burrow had 5 touchdowns in that game, almost 400 yards. Lamar had 4 touchdowns through the air in that game, 348 yards. And it's funny because I see the Ravens as they're obviously a Super Bowl contender. Maybe that's still the Super Bowl favorite in the AFC, even if they don't have home field. And yet, if they lost this game, which would be totally understandable, a division rival, you split games, they'd be at 6-4. Who knows what's going to happen with this Steelers team? And they're kind of in the morass. So where do you want to start? Just offensive, defensive matchups? Because Lamar versus this Bengals defense on paper is probably the biggest mismatch of the game. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I trust Lamar Jackson and this Ravens offense far more than I trust what's been a really wobbly, decent to good against bad teams, Bengals defense to sometimes looks like they're putting things together, also kind of seeming like they're aging out a little bit too quickly. This is going to be super interesting because right now Lamar Jackson's at a 68.2 completion percentage. He's playing lights out and including some extremely tough throws and throws out of structure, but it's all clicking between himself and Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, and his receivers. And in that scheme, everyone's like eating and everyone's benefiting. Derrick Henry, obviously just dominating, people already over 1,000 yards this season. Everything is starting to feel like it clicks together against a Bengals defense that we just don't know who they are week over week. And the scheme itself and Lamar's ability and the receivers and Derrick Henry widening things out, making people play differently. Lamar Jackson has targeted a wide open receiver on 32.8% of his pass attempts this season, second highest in the NFL. That's going to be tough.
Who's higher? I'm shocked. Jared Goff. I was like,
it's gotta be Jared Goff.
This is a total guess.
Stats, yeah.
I'm just thinking of what offense could be run better. It's no slight, obviously, to Goff or Lamar. And I think it really hit home last week. Vance Joseph admitted, he said it out loud, we wanted to force them to pass because you're just picking your poison. And so it's why this Derrick Henry-Lamar combination is so mutually beneficial
it's just wonderful.
That a team would actually have to feel like they have to sell out to stop the run, which I get it, but also that's not a great idea. That's pretty much what we saw actually in the first matchup. I went back and checked some of my notes for that game too. And the Bengals did blitz a lot, which I was surprised, and they did get a lot of pressure on Lamar Jackson, tried to get the ball out of his hand, and that's just not working. There's no perfect way to attack Lamar right now or this team because he's better against zone than he used to be. You saw that a week ago against Denver. The game has slowed down for him. He's like in the Matrix right now. Like everything is just in absolute slow motion. But I'm the other way. I actually, as crazy as it is, as bad as the Bengals are defending the run, if you were trying to make a choice, I'd rather die slowly against the Ravens and just see if we can bow up and maybe just get them into some third down situations because counting on Lamar to not beat you through the air is dumb. Here's a stat, and then I'll hand it off to you. This is a lot on Lamar, but FTN, where Aaron Schatz works, where there's DVOA, they also have defensive yards above average, adjusted for the defenses they've played. Lamar is at 1,114 yards for the season, above average. The next closest quarterback is actually Jaden Daniels at 676. The gap between Lamar, number 1, and Jaden Daniels, number 2, is the same as the gap between Jaden Daniels, number 2, and the 16th best quarterback in the league. So and that's not even counting his running ability. So that's just how good this offense is right now. They're the 8th best offense through 9 weeks in all the years that they've measured it over at FTN too. So it's like, I don't know. I'd rather die slowly, personally.
You mentioned, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Not
I
in
think,
life. In life, quickly, but on the football field, slowly.
well, hopefully quickly, but over a long period of time, be on the planet for a long time. Greg, please don't put that in the universe. Yeah. So, but I think, yes, you want to try to make them at least see what happens if you try to make them run. Because like I said before, it's just clicking for this passing attack in ways that even struggled a little bit prior to the start of the season. And that's only going to get more cohesive. They're only going to get more reps and better reps for each other. And where I think you might have a little bit of an argument, a case to make for the Bengals defense there is, even though they've been really erratic and just they're number 25 in DVOA for a reason, right? But they're not missing a ton of tackles on the first and second level. Now, if that is Derrick Henry enters the picture, like that meme of like Big Bird kicking down the door. Like if Derrick Henry enters your life in such fashion, I don't know if you're not missing tackles in that way, particularly when we see some of the stuff they did at the beginning of the year with Lamar running the ball as well and that misdirection. So it's just so hard to stop this team and to pick which one is going to hurt the least.
Right, because I remember in that first game, I actually thought they had some of the run-pass option plays defended pretty well, and they would still get 6 yards. It's like
still staying ahead of the down.
Right. There were some times where I thought Lamar Jackson made the wrong read. That was one of the games where it really clicked, like how they've cut the cheat code, where he actually made the wrong read. He should have kept the ball, or he should have handed it off. And yet you're still getting five yards, even if everyone's in good position. If you want to blitz them like they did the first time around, and I doubt they'll run the same game plan because that's not what Lou Anarumo was going to do. Like Justice Hill is a very valuable player in this offense. They killed the Broncos on the couple times that they sent pressure here, and then they let him out of the backfield as a little just outlet for Lamar Jackson. There's just a lot of ways that they're going to beat you. The pass rush is a big concern for the Bengals. It's really Trey Hendrickson and not much else. And the Ravens have been surprisingly good as a pass protection unit all season. Ronnie Stanley having a nice season. On the flip side, are you a little worried, and we don't know if Orlando Brown is available for this game, that Cody Ford and Amarius Mims could be the starting tackles for Joe Burrow in this game?
I mean, I think that you could see that they were a little worried about some of the ways that their pass protection was starting to break down a little bit because they were trying to play in heavier personnel over the last couple of weeks. They were trying to do different things that you don't always see from a Zach Taylor offense to get just a little bit more help in different ways, not only get more eligibles on the field for Joe Burrow, but also chipping when you need to and just, getting, but they're going to have an issue with that because Eric All, the tight end that they really, really liked, torn ACL. He was, Paul Dehner at The Athletic was writing about how he was one of the reasons why they could feel more comfortable just adding extra protection and extra things. Joe Burrow is playing at an otherworldly, unreal level, Greg. It kind of feels like he forced himself to go to that place a little bit.
Right.
Well.
Yeah, it's maybe a dark place, but it's a place that has led to a lot of production. Let's actually listen to Joe Burrow talking about, he just isn't necessarily happy, even after a 5-touchdown performance.
Yeah, I think just how the season has gone, knowing what's ahead of us, knowing what we're going to have to do to get back into this. One win isn't going to make or break our season. So, I'm going to strive for perfection every day and every game. So, until that happens, what's there to be happy about?
Hey, look, he just wasn't happy. I love that they asked him about that on Wednesday, and he was like, I guess I should work on that.
He blacked out. He doesn't remember it.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't know that I was making a face like that. I guess I should worry about my body language a little more. They also asked him about the Khalil Herbert trade, which let's talk about quickly here. Mm-hmm. And they just said, I'm glad we went out and tried to get better. Just very stone-faced, is like, we need to get better. I wasn't expecting the Bengals to make a lot of moves at the trade deadline, though. I did like that they tried to improve their backfield because Zach Moss is expected to miss the rest of the season. So that's a lot to ask of Chase Brown to be their only running back there and Khalil Herbert can give them a little bit of a hammer. They're going to need to be able to run the ball. If T. Higgins is not available for this game, I have a feeling he is. I don't know. I don't know anything. But in a scenario where they were maybe trying to push him to play last week or not, and you got 2 games in 5 days, this is the game that you save T. Higgins for, because you mentioned it. No Eric All, leaving extra guys in for protection. Suddenly, that receiver group, it's a big fall off. Mike Gesicki has more yards this season, and it's actually played great, than T. Higgins, which is crazy.
Yeah, to your point, yes, on T. Higgins, if he's going to be ready to go, like, this has got to be the game to be ready to go. Joe Burrow wanted to circle back on that for a minute,
please.
Because a couple weeks ago, I was joking around saying, like, oh, man, he's in a really dark place because he was quiet. He was totally, like, in this silent rage in his press conference. Like, he was very quiet and, like, low tone, and you could tell he was just internally seething. And I saw that, and I was like, he's going to snap. One of these days, he's going to snap, and then, like, the serial killer vibe's going to just come out of him, and it did. And you watch that game, and you watch how he was on the sideline and how he was talking around, like, Jermaine Burton at a certain point, who was a scratch because he missed practice on Saturday. So back to the point of the pass catchers, like, you're seeing him try to work with other guys, get other guys open. Obviously Jamar is going to be who Jamar is, but Mike Gesicki has stepped up in certain ways, particularly when the Bengals are attacking the seam. And I think that actually could quietly be a big difference in this game, because we know that attention is going to go toward the big name receiver / receivers if T. Higgins can play. But Mike Gesicki, with the 100 yards game last week, I think we'll see more of him, because the Ravens passing defense, which has let them down a lot, and yes, they traded for Trey White. I don't expect him to be a huge part of that secondary right away, if even for the long term, just coming off the Achilles, but good depth just in case. But the Ravens have allowed the second most yards per attempt and the second most EPA on passes in the seams this season. And it's interesting because Joe Burrow targets that seam and those seam routes at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. So I do think this could quietly be a Joe Burrow, Mike Gesicki continuation of what they did last week.
Gesicki keeps making incredibly athletic, improbable catches.
Just like he did at Penn State.
Joe Burrow, just like he did for that one season in Miami, where he was just next level. And he got paid for it, and I'm happy that he did. And I'm happy that he ended up in a place like Cincinnati, because we just would have never known that Mike Gesicki still had this in him. And I think Joe Burrow is just feeling, first of all, he's moving so well.
Yeah.
He just creates space and time on the field in a way that reminds me a lot of Mahomes, but he does it in his own way, where he creates open receivers by the way that he moves in the pocket. I think he's just so frustrated that this is the season that I actually am healthy and everything should be happening for us. Like, I've been waiting for a season like this, and it's not really happening. And it's not because of him, although they have had the ball late a handful of times on offense and actually haven't gotten the ball done. That's why I was annoyed when Bengals fans were like, hey, we're these amount of plays away from him being the favorite for MVP. I was like, they've had chances on offense to win at the end of these games. Unfortunately, their defense is bad enough that that's maybe making Burrow frustrated. And then T. Higgins isn't healthy. And you even look at the box score in the game the first time they played the Ravens, it's really all Jamar and T. Higgins. And you really notice the last couple of weeks, defenses took away the deep ball from Jamar Chase, and they were still able to be really productive, but it wasn't the same. They're just not the same unless you have both of them, because this is a star-driven team. I don't think it's a scheme-driven team. And
I would agree with that. That's a really good point, actually. I would definitely.
Actually?
Yeah. Well, not actually. I mean, I don't want to cut you off.
I mean,
it was a really
as
great
Dave
point.
Damashek likes to point out, everyone check out his new show, by the way, The Sheck Show.
I just followed him on Instagram.
He's the best. And I just did The Sheck Show this week, and he's great. He always pointed out, like, when someone says actually, that's a red flag, because they don't normally think
I was thinking,
in this case, that you don't normally think I make a good point, but actually this time I did.
Well, not to go sideways, actually.
Please.
But you continually make good points. That just stopped me in my tracks for a second, because I'm like, if I'm going to sum up why this Bengals offense has just not, I mean, without the guys that they have on the field, you just don't, and without Burrow, you just don't get it. You don't see it, and certainly not from the head coach. And so that's where I paused for a minute, because I was like, oh, that's a really good way of phrasing that. Without their bona fide dudes on the field, including Joe Burrow, lifting it seems like trying to lift this defense, out of its inconsistency. You just don't have that faith.
And he could do it. He cooked the Ravens last time, but he did have one interception in that game, and that wasn't totally the difference because there's a possession in overtime. I mean, Lamar fumbled the ball. He actually reminded me a little bit of Joe Burrow. He was very upset after that game, even though they won, yes. But it could be one of those games where just one pick either way, and I can't quite believe that the Ravens defense is this bad. I keep expecting it to start getting better because that's been the history, but it is a different coaching staff. Marcus Williams comes back into the lineup last week at safety, but right now they are 14th overall on defense, 23rd against the pass. They're a good run-stopping team.
Yeah.
The Bengals are not a team that will bang their head against the wall if it's not working. They're just going to throw the ball like crazy, and they're going to pick on Brandon Stevens probably back there, Za'Darius Washington. There's a lot of spots there, and their pass rush hasn't been good enough. So I actually think he should be fine. Cody Ford and Amarius Mims should probably be fine against the Ravens and their pass rush.
You heard them looking around trying to maybe potentially test the trade deadline in that, but just, they're struggling in that phase. And I think either or in this game, Greg, as we get ready to make our picks, either
too early in the week.
Super
I'm not ready.
High scoring on both sides, right? Because I could totally see that super high scoring because everyone just throws it, right? I mean, obviously you're going to try to, like you said, die slowly potentially if you're Lou, but I think ultimately everyone's just throwing the hell out of the ball, and we could get a high-scoring game. Or it could be totally the opposite, where both defensive coordinators with some of the familiarity this is like their kitchen sink game plan. You know how, like Jonathan Gannon, for example, every once in a while, he has this kitchen sink game plan where he just throws all this weird stuff at you, and it's not something that you're used to, whatever, because this is, AFC North. This is going to be a weird one.
I could see that, but I feel like these defenses can't handle the kitchen sink game right now. They've tried it. There's just not a lot of cohesion. I'm at the point in the year where I know the Ravens, or I think the Ravens will probably lose games or a game in the rest of the season, but I'm not going to pick it.
Yeah.
I'm picking them to win every single game.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, you are.
I'm 100% there with you. In fact, because earlier in our Thursday shows and our previews, I was trying to be a little risky with the picks and think, maybe this could. I'm like, nope. Team is good. Pick that team. Ravens are a wagon. Pick the Ravens. I'm picking the Ravens by a touchdown, actually. A high-scoring game, 35-28.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll go 30-27. Not quite as high as last time around, but quite high. It comes down to the end. Bengals aren't done if they lose this game, but they feel like they're going to be in a different tier of scrapping and trying to get to that 7 seed. If they lose this game, they'll be in prime time because of the flex decision in a week as well against the Chargers. They'll have a little extra rest after this Thursday night. So they're not going anywhere. I don't think their season's done, but there's something about this team. They weren't having fun coming into the season with the contract stuff, both receivers. And they don't seem like they're having that much fun now. They feel a little 23 Eagles to me. I don't think they're going to collapse like the Eagles, but it's like the expectations are tough in life. You don't want to have expectations.
Plus,
I think they had too much expectations.
If you're a frustrated team, I got to say, there's a lot of cool atmospheres in the NFL, especially for night games. It's hard for me to find one that's cooler than a night game home at Baltimore.
I've never been.
It's sick, dude. It's very gothic vibes. It's just and it's loud. And if you're a frustrated team on the other side, it's only going to get more frustrating with that crowd. Okay, so we are both taking the Ravens. Fun show. Thank you to Mike Garafolo for joining us. Thank you to Jourdan Rodrigue for making time in between her busy press conference schedule. We will be back on the Wednesday preview show. Might drop a little early this week since the trade deadline one dropped early, maybe the preview too. Patrick Claybon, Steve Weiss will be in the studio previewing all the games. Look, when we're bringing the gothic vibes, football is back.